What's up you guys, Mo Awesome from Awesome MTB and welcome to the Awesome MTB Trail Bike Buyer's Guide. And what'd you think about the ARI Delano Peak?
It's the bike that surprised me the most in the testing. It's just very nimble, it climbs really well, and when you want to dig your heels into it, it'll eat it.
So what's your thoughts on the ARI Delano Peak?
It's super nimble, poppy, and playful, but also really stable when it needs to be. So yeah, I think it's like the best all-around bike for me. I really enjoy it.
What's up you guys, Mo Awesome from Awesome MTB and welcome back to the Awesome MTB Trail Bike Buyer's Guide. Over the last few months, we've been testing out 11 of the best trail bikes on the market. Now these are gonna be 29ers with 140mm to 150mm of travel, and even though there's 11 bikes in this test, each one of these bikes has a unique personality, and the goal of the series is to help make the purchase of your next bike a lot easier by having all of the information. Now in this video, we're gonna be breaking down the ARI Delano Peak. Now this is gonna be one of those bikes out there that's probably the most insane bang for buck. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but let's talk about the actual bike itself. So the ARI Delano Peak has 142mm of rear travel, 150mm of travel up front, and this is actually a size extra large test bike, 6'2" for reference with an 805 saddle height, and this is the Pro model. Up front we have a 150mm travel RockShox Lyric Ultimate with the buttercups, and in the rear we have a super deluxe rear shock from RockShox. We have a SRAM GX transmission drivetrain, we have a PNW dropper post, and an ergon saddle. Up front we have an ARI alloy handlebar, we have ergon grips. For stopping power, we have SRAM Maven brakes, and these are the silver edition with pad contact adjustment. For wheels, we have a DT Swiss 1700 alloy wheel set with a DT Swiss 350 rear hub. For tires, we have a Maxxis Minion DHF up front, and we have an Aggressor tire in the rear. And obviously we have our Crank Brothers Stam 7 pedals in a size large. Now this bike is coming in about 33.27 pounds, and that is with pedals. This build's on sale right now for $49.99. Talk about that as well as some interesting feedback from some other testers of the ARI Delano Peak. But first, let's hit the trails to show you guys how this thing performs out there. All right, you guys, we have another review on trail coming at you guys. Today we have the ARI Delano Peak. So this is the chunky portion of our test called stair steps. And you guys, if there was a Goldilocks of mountain bikes, I feel like the ARI Delano Peak would be that bike. A lot of chunk coming through here. I would actually say the biggest difference right now is having the RockShox suspension on this build. I really like that Lyric, but in particular, I really like the buttercup as well for the steep chunk. And the ARI Delano Peak is handling it so well. I feel like steep chunk is a forte of the ARI Delano Peak because it has such a precise front end and also a very nimble rear because that chainstay is so short. So those little kind of pickup moves where you want to pick the front wheel up, very easy. It goes down, must go up. And the ARI Delano Peak loves to go up. Man, I feel like ARI, they really dialed in that steep seat angle early on. I remember looking at this bike a few years ago and being like, wow, that seat angle looks so good. And on trail, this bike has such a good climbing feel to it. Whether it's tech or it's just normal fire road, it's a very efficient pedaling platform. A bit of technical climbing here, timing the pedal strokes, no problem. That steep seat angle. I am loving being 6'2" and seeing more companies recognize high saddle heights, XL frames, steepen that seat angle. And I feel like this might be one of the most comfortable feeling climbing bikes out of the test. All right, now we have a little bit of high speed fun on the Delano Peak. And you know, this is where it's gonna get interesting because I feel like there's gonna be two things we're gonna touch on here. First off, the Delano is insanely fun on the downhill. It has probably one of the most nimble feels while out on the trails. It loves to get manual just because of that short rear end. and it still handles chunk really well at speed. I will say high speed stability isn't necessarily its forte, and coming through here, this section's pretty washed out through that chunk. I will say it handles its own. However, I do think there are bikes that might have a touch more high speed stability, but then you would lose the nimbleness that the Delano Peak provides. A little up and over through here. We got Hannah on the side over there. And we got a little bit of tech climb here. And man, the Delano Peak does really good up there. Like I said, you guys, I feel like this is probably one of the most trail bike, if that makes sense, out of the test. It's one of those bikes that I feel like has such a playful personality, and I think it wants to keep that. And I like that about this bike for so many riders out there. We got a little bit of momentum test, just pumping off the trails. God, the momentum generation on this bike, really good. It has, like I said, a very playful poppy feel, and I feel like it generates speed really well. I love the RockShox suspension on here. Also love the DVO, but most importantly, I love these Maven brakes. These have really grown on me. I feel like it definitely is also one of the more precise bikes in the test, similar to the Pivot Switchblade, I would say, in terms of front end feel. We're into the most chunky part. And this is also where I really do like the Delano Peak, because even though on paper it's not necessarily the most aggressive bike, it handles its own through here. Yes. Oh yes, right through the chunk. And man, that Lyric feels so good up there. So much control with the brakes too. And just like that, we are at the bottom. All the control in the world. Now, like I said, not necessarily the most aggressive down that, but it handles its own. And I feel like we're ready to break down the ARI Delano Peak. So hopefully you guys enjoyed some of that riding footage on the ARI Delano Peak. Talked about some stuff that I love about the Delano Peak and some stuff that I don't necessarily love. So the first thing that I love about the Delano Peak is how playful it is. This is probably gonna be one of the more playful bikes out of this test. It has one of the shortest rear end of the bikes, but also a very poppy, playful suspension design. So when you're out on the trails, you're really able to control the travel. It has a head angle in the middle of about 65 degrees. So I feel like it's not too slack, not too steep. A lot of control over your line choice on more technical downhills, but at the same time, like I said, you could still play around with the bike out on the trails. Another thing that I love about this bike is the suspension design. I really do feel like this is a really good blend of very active. There's gonna be a lot of traction on technical style terrain. It's got this very poppy feeling to it in and out of corners. And I feel like ARI did a very good job of fine tuning the suspension design to cater to both a rider that wants a little bit more of a playful feel out on the trail, but also the rider that definitely wants traction. I also love how this bike climbs. I feel like the seat angle is definitely on the steeper side, and I love that as someone with a high saddle height, I feel like you can really put the power down and know that all of it is going to be translated to forward momentum. And the fact that there's room for 2 bottles on the frame, as someone that likes to go for a lot of big, ridiculous rides, it's really nice to be able to fit 2 bottles in the frame. Now, in terms of some things I don't necessarily love about the ARI Delano Peak, I do think if you're a rider out there that's trying to look for the most downhill capable bike, there might be some other bikes in this test that are a little bit more slacker, have a little bit lower bottom brackets, and maybe just a little bit more high speed stability. I feel like ARI is really trying to bridge the gap between enduro and a playful trail bike with the ARI Delano Peak. So if you're that rider that really does prioritize high speed stability, you might want to look at some other bikes in this test. This definitely is going to be a bike that's going to be trying to cater to both worlds. Another thing that I don't necessarily love about the ARI Delano Peak is there's not too many extras in terms of the actual frame. You don't have internal frame storage, and there's not too many adjustments besides the flip chip that you can make with the bike. I will say if you're someone that likes to tinker, or you like that thing like internal frame storage, you might want to look at some other bikes in this test. But other than that, I really do love the ARI Delano Peak. I feel like every time I get on this bike, it feels at home, and it's one of those bikes that's very easy to ride as well. I feel like when you're out on the trails, whether you want to ride a gnarly downhill trail or you want to just kind of play around, have fun, this bike really does do well on both sides. I also really like this build kit. I feel like this is going to be one of those bikes that definitely benefits from RockShox suspension. RockShox suspension, I feel like feels a little bit more on the plusher side. I feel like this bike pairs really well with that softer suspension offering, and yeah, it's just a really awesome blend of both worlds. I love the fact that you got Maven silver brake, and I think the biggest thing to highlight with the ARI Delano Peak is going to be that build kit and the price point. Once again, I do think this is probably the best value MTB out there. So quick summary of the ARI Delano Peak. I feel like this is a true trail bike. How did this bike compare to some other bikes in this test? Once again, you guys are gonna have to stay tuned for the conclusion of this video series coming out. So be sure to subscribe to not miss out on any videos. And also, if you guys have any questions about the ARI Delano Peak, definitely let us know in the comment section. We're happy to answer them. And until next time, time, you guys. Ride awesome. You.